There are luxury handbags losing 60 to 80% of their value the moment you walk out of the store. Bags that salespeople tell you are investments are actually financial disasters. You spend $3,000 thinking you're buying something that holds value. 3 years later, it's worth $800 on the resale market, and nobody wants to buy it. The luxury bag market is collapsing for specific brands and styles, while others are appreciating. If you're buying any of these 15 bags thinking they hold value, you're about to lose thousands of dollars. Here's what's tanking and why. 1. Gucci Dionysus is down 65% in 3 years. The Gucci Dionysus with the tiger head closure retailed for $2,800 in 2021. Today, the same bag in excellent condition sells for $900 to $1,100 on the Real and Vestiaire Collective. That's a 65% loss in 3 years. Worse than buying a new car. Here's why it collapsed. Gucci flooded the market. Between 2018 and 2020, the Dionysus was everywhere. Every influencer had one. Every boutique had dozens. Supply massively exceeded organic demand. When trends moved on, thousands of sellers tried dumping their bags simultaneously. The resale market was crushed by oversupply. But here's the deeper problem. The Dionysus isn't a classic design. It's a trend piece from creative director Alessandro Michele's maximalist era. Fashion moved toward minimalism. The bag that looked current in 2019 looks dated in 2024. Trend pieces never hold value because by definition they go out of style. If you bought a Dionysus thinking it was an investment, you lost $1,700. That's not depreciation. That's destruction. Louis Vuitton multi-pochette lost 50% instantly. The multi-pochette accessoires retailed for $1,550 and had 18-month wait lists in 2020. Hype was insane. People paid $3,000 on secondary markets just to get one immediately. By 2023, the same bag sells for $800 to $1,000. Everyone who panic bought during the hype lost half their money. Here's what happened. Louis Vuitton manufactured the bag in massive quantities once initial demand was met. The artificial scarcity disappeared. Wait lists evaporated. By late 2021, you could walk into stores and buy one off the shelf. The secondary market collapsed because retail became readily available. But here's the brutal lesson. Paying above retail for hyped bags is financial suicide. The multi-pochette wasn't scarce because it was exclusive. It was scarce because LV was ramping up production. Everyone who paid $3,000 in 2020 could have paid $1,550 in 2021 and $800 in 2023. They lost $2,200 chasing hype. Hype-driven bags always collapse. Always. The hype ends. Production continues. Resale prices crater. 3. Balenciaga City bags are down 70%. From peak, Balenciaga City bags were the IT bag of the mid-2000s. They retailed for $1,500 to $2,000. Celebrities carried them. Wait lists were months long. Today, those same bags in excellent condition sell for $400 to $600. A 70% to 75% loss. Here's why the collapse was so severe. The City bag was a specific aesthetic from a specific era. Distressed leather, motorcycle hardware, slouchy shape. That look defined 2005 to 2012. Fashion moved on. The bags didn't age into classics. They aged into dated relics of early 2000s style. But here's what makes it worse. Balenciaga produced these bags for over a decade. There are tens of thousands in circulation. The resale market is flooded with supply and almost no demand. Sellers compete by dropping prices. Bags that were $1,500 now sell for less than fast fashion. If you're holding a Balenciaga City bag thinking it will come back, it won't. The aesthetic is permanently associated with an era that's over. The bag is worth $400 and dropping. 4. Gucci Marmont has lost 55%. Since 2020, the Gucci Marmont with the double G logo and quilted leather retailed for $2,300 in 2020. Current resale price for the same bag in excellent condition is $900 to $1,100. That's a 55% loss in 4 years. Here's the problem with Marmont bags. They were everywhere from 2017 to 2021. Gucci produced them in massive quantities across every size and color variation. The market is completely saturated. There are more sellers than buyers, and that ratio gets worse every month as more people try to sell. But here's what Gucci did wrong. They treated the Marmont like a volume product instead of a luxury good. When you can buy a bag at Nordstrom Rack for 30% off, it's not luxury anymore. It's accessible fashion with luxury pricing. The resale market recognized this before retail buyers did. People who bought Marmont bags as investments are watching them depreciate like used cars. You can't get $2,300 back. You can get $1,000 if you're lucky, and accept the loss. 5. Fendi baguette vintage reshoes are losing value. Fendi brought back the baguette in 2019 with vintage-inspired designs. They retailed for $2,400 to $3,900 depending on embellishments. Today those bags sell for $1,200 to $2,000. Some limited editions lost 50% in 3 years. Here's why vintage reissues fail. People who wanted original baguettes from the 90s already own them. People who want the style buy vintage originals for less money. The reissue targets nobody. It's too expensive for younger buyers and redundant for older buyers who have the originals. But here's the market reality. Vintage Fendi baguettes from 1997 to 2003 hold value better than 2019 reissues. An original in good condition sells for $1,500 to $2,500. A 2019 reissue that costs $3,900 sells for $2,000. The reproduction is worth less than the original, despite being newer. If you bought a baguette reissue thinking it had the same value as vintage, you were wrong. The market wants authentic vintage, not manufactured nostalgia. 6. Bottega Veneta cassette is dropping fast. The Bottega Veneta cassette bag retailed for $3,200 in 2020. It was the hottest bag of the year. Today it sells for $1,600 to $1,900. That's a 40% to 50% loss in 4 years, and the decline is accelerating. Here's what changed. Daniel Lee left Bottega Veneta in 2021. He was the creative director who designed the cassette. New creative director Matthew Blasey has a completely different aesthetic. The cassette is no longer being pushed by the brand. It became an orphan design from the previous era. Bags tied to specific creative directors lose value when that director leaves. The cassette was Daniel Lee's vision. People bought it for his aesthetic. When he left, demand collapsed. The bag represents a finished chapter, not ongoing brand identity. If you're holding a cassette hoping it stabilizes, it won't until the trend cycle comes back around. That's 10 to 15 years minimum. You'll be holding a bag worth $1,600 that you paid $3,200 for. 7. Chloe Drew bags lost 60% in 5 years. Chloe Drew bags with the circular hardware retailed for $1,800 to $2,400 between 2015 and 2019. Current resale value is $600 to $900, a 60% to 65% loss. Here's why Chloe bags don't hold value. The brand has no consistent identity. Every creative director brings a completely different aesthetic. The Drew bag was Claire Wade Keller's design. She left in 2017. The bag died with her tenure. Newer collections ignored it completely. Chloe bags are carried by every department store and heavily discounted. You can buy Drew bags new at 40% off during sales. Why would anyone pay resale prices close to retail when department stores constantly discount? The resale market can't compete with retail discounting. People holding Drew bags thinking their investments are competing with Nordstrom anniversary sale pricing. You can't win that competition. 8. Givenchy Antigona has flatlined at 50% loss. The Givenchy Antigona retailed for $2,400 to $2,900. Current resale sits at $1,200 to $1,500. That's roughly a 50% loss, and prices haven't moved in 2 years. The bag isn't appreciating. It's permanently stuck at half value. Here's why the Antigona failed. It was positioned as the intellectual's work bag. Structured shape, functional design. But here's the problem with functional. Functional isn't aspirational. People don't save up to buy functional. They buy functional when it's convenient. Bags that rely on function instead of brand recognition don't hold value. Nobody's showing off their Antigona. Nobody's posting it on Instagram. It's invisible. In luxury goods, invisible means worthless in resale. You paid $2,900 for discretion. Discretion is worth $1,400 on resale. If you bought an Antigona as an investment, you bought the wrong bag. Investments need visibility. 9. Loewe puzzle bags are down 45%. The Loewe puzzle bag retailed for $2,750 in 2020. Current resale value is $1,400 to $1,700, a 40% to 45% loss in 4 years. Here's why puzzle bags aren't holding. They were Instagram famous from 2017 to 2020. Fashion media called them the thinking person's luxury bag. But here's what happened. Loewe produced them in dozens of sizes, colors, and materials. The market is saturated. There's no scarcity. But here's the design problem. The puzzle is complicated. It has 40 leather panels. It's geometric and architectural. That's interesting at first. It's annoying long-term, difficult to pack, and impractical for daily use. Resale buyers recognize these problems. They're not willing to pay near retail for a bag that looks better than it functions. People selling puzzle bags are learning that interesting design doesn't mean good design. The resale market wants bags that work, not bags that look complicated. 10. Saint Laurent Kate tassel is losing ground. The Saint Laurent Kate bag with tassel retailed for $1,800 in 2019. Current resale is $900 to $1,200. That's a 35% to 50% loss, depending on condition and demand cycles. Here's why Kate bags don't appreciate. Saint Laurent produces them continuously in endless variations. The Kate is too subtle. It works for people who already know Saint Laurent. It doesn't work for people buying bags as status symbols. If you're trying to sell a Kate bag, you're competing with retail availability and better-known alternatives. You'll get $1,000 for something you paid $1,800 for. 11. Valentino rock stud bags are down 55%. Valentino rock stud bags with pyramid studs everywhere retailed for $2,400 to $3,200 between 2015 and 2020. Current resale is $900 to $1,400, a 55% to 60% loss. Here's what killed rock stud value. The studs were everywhere. Shoes, sandals, accessories. Valentino flooded the market with studded everything. It went from edgy to basic in 3 years. The studs looked dated. By 2020, they looked like 2015. But here's the trend cycle problem. The rock stud was too distinctive. You can't pretend it's timeless. Everyone knows it's from the mid-2010 set. That dates the bag permanently. Resale buyers don't want dated pieces. They want classic pieces or current pieces. The rock stud is neither. People holding rock stud bags, hoping they come back into style, are waiting for a trend cycle that might never happen. Those studs are permanently associated with 2015. 12. Prada Galleria Saffiano is stable but low. The Prada Galleria in Saffiano leather retailed for $2,400 to $3,200. Current resale is $1,200 to $1,800. That's a 40% to 50% loss. But prices have stabilized. The bag isn't collapsing further, but it's not appreciating either. Here's why it's stuck. The Galleria is practical and boring. It's a work bag. It's functional. It has minimal branding. These are all logical choices. They're also why resale value is low. Boring doesn't appreciate. Functional doesn't create demand. Minimal branding doesn't generate hype. But here's the supply reality. Prada makes Galleria bags constantly. Every size, every color, every season. There's infinite supply. The bags are always available at retail. Sometimes they're discounted at outlets. Resale can't compete with retail availability and outlet pricing. If you bought a Galleria hoping it would appreciate like a Birkin, you misunderstood the market. Birkins are scarce. Gallerias are everywhere. Scarcity creates value. Availability destroys it. 13. Gucci Jackie, 1961. Lost 40%. Already, the Gucci Jackie 1961 reissue launched in 2020 for $2,980. Current resale is $1,600 to $1,900, a 35% to 45% loss in 4 years. Here's why vintage reissues keep failing. Original Jackie bags from the 1960s to 1990s are available on vintage markets for $800 to $2,000, depending on condition. The 2020 reissue costs $2,980 new and $1,800 resale. Why would buyers pay more for a reproduction when they can buy authentic vintage for less? But here's the authentication problem. The 2020 Jackie looks almost identical to vintage Jackies. They're so similar that resale platforms struggle to differentiate them in listings. This creates price competition between vintage and reissue. The vintage always wins because it costs less and has authentic heritage. People who bought Jackie 1961 reissues thinking they were buying into Jackie history were wrong. You bought a reproduction that's worth less than the originals it copies. 14. Burberry TB bags are already dropping. Burberry's TB monogram bags launched in 2019 under Riccardo Tisci. They retailed for $1,790 to $2,490. Current resale is $900 to $1,400. That's a 40% to 50% loss in 5 years. Here's why TB bags failed. Burberry was trying to create a new logo monogram to compete with LV and Gucci. It didn't work. The TB monogram has no heritage, no recognition, and no cultural significance. People don't know what it stands for. Thomas Burberry, the founder. Nobody cares. But here's the creative director problem. Tisci left Burberry in 2022. New creative director Daniel Lee is ignoring the TB monogram entirely. He's bringing back the check pattern. The TB bags are orphan designs that the current brand doesn't support. They're dead products still in circulation. If you bought a TB bag thinking it would become iconic like the LV monogram, it won't. The monogram failed. The brand moved on. You're holding a discontinued design worth half what you paid. 15. Coach Tabby is overproduced and declining. The Coach Tabby bag launched in 2020 as Coach's comeback attempt. It retailed for $350 to $650 depending on size. Current resale is $150 to $300. That's a 50% to 55% loss. Here's why Tabby failed. Coach flooded the market. Every influencer got a PR package. Every store had 30 in stock. The brand paid for Instagram campaigns. It was everywhere immediately. Oversaturation killed any perception of exclusivity. The bag became common before anyone wanted it. But here's the outlet problem. Coach Tabby bags are already at outlets for 40% off. Why would anyone pay $300 resale when outlets sell them for $200 brand new? The resale market can't compete with Coach's own discounting strategy. People who bought Tabby bags thinking Coach was making a luxury comeback were wrong. Coach tried to manufacture luxury through marketing. The market recognized it as mid-tier product with inflated pricing. Here's the pattern across all 15 bags. They were either trend pieces that dated quickly, overproduced items that saturated markets, or reissues that couldn't compete with authentic vintage. None of them had the 3 factors that create value: scarcity, timeless design, and consistent brand support. Bags that hold value share characteristics. Limited production, classic designs that transcend trends, and brands that maintain heritage without flooding markets. Hermes Birkins appreciate because you can't walk into a store and buy one. Chanel classic flaps hold value because the design hasn't changed in 40 years. These 15 bags have none of those qualities. But here's what salespeople won't tell you. They push these bags as investments because they need to move inventory. They tell you luxury bags hold value. They don't tell you that only specific bags from specific brands, in specific styles, hold value. Everything else depreciates like cars. The math is brutal. A Gucci Dionysus buyer who spent $2,800 in 2021 can sell it for $1,000 today. They lost $1,800. That's a 64% loss in 3 years. They would have been better off burning $1,800. At least that would have been fast. If you're considering buying any of these bags thinking they'll hold value, they won't. They're depreciating assets masquerading as investments. You'll spend thousands and lose thousands. The only winner is the brand that already has your money. The resale market doesn't lie. Retail salespeople can tell you anything. Resale prices tell you what bags are actually worth once the marketing and hype disappear. That's not holding value. That's collapsing value. Don't get scammed into thinking any luxury bag is an investment. Most of them are financial disasters. These 15 are just the most obvious examples.